Hello, everyone. We're going to get started. Welcome to the EJ Community Outreach Meeting. I'm Doug Panam, the Wastewater Superintendent. I'm joined tonight with Kendra Martin. She's the town's water sewer engineer, and she's hosting tonight's Zoom meeting. I'm also joined by our consultant, Percy Witten, Neil Price, and Cassie. I don't want to mess up her last name. Tonight's meeting's being held in person and remote, online via Zoom. For those folks in the room that need assisted hearing devices, we have those. If you need them, just let me know. If you are remote and you wish to comment or ask a question, you can check in with Kendra online, and she can has the ability to let you into the meeting to do so. Tonight we'll have a brief presentation that Neil will go through, and it's going to give you some of the history of the and background of this project. And at the end of that presentation, we'll open it up for discussion and some comments. We will limit that to 3 minutes, just because it seems like there's a lot of folks here that wish to speak, and we want to make sure that we give everybody enough time to do so. When you do come up to the microphone, introduce yourself. We also do have a sign-in sheet. If you haven't and you could, we appreciate that. Let's see. When you ask your question, just direct it to us, and we'll do the best we can to answer those questions for you here tonight. But also, we will, after we submit the draft EIR, we will also have a link on the town's website to the MEPA page for that comment period, so that you'll have the ability to also use that MEPA process to submit any questions that you may have from this meeting. Please, when you come up, be respectful and professional, and we'll get through the meeting together. Thank you. Neil?
Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. So as Doug said, we're here tonight. This is the environmental justice community outreach component of this, which is a necessary component of the MEPA process. MEPA stands for Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act. It's a clearinghouse. It's sort of the first stage of permitting for all large projects. And when you are within a mile of a designated environmental justice community, which this project is, the census block where the treatment plant is located is within a designated environmental justice community. This outreach meeting is a required component of that. So that's why we're here tonight. I'm going to begin with a little bit of a project overview, and then get into the necessary required components, the regulatory requirements for an environmental justice community outreach meeting that were specified in our certificate that we received from MEPA from the first phase of that, which is the environmental notification form. And I'll talk a little bit about more about that in a moment. So currently, the way that wastewater treatment and effluent discharge works in Plymouth is that the plant is permitted for up to 3 million gallons per day of treatment capacity. So the plant can take in 3 million gallons a day, is allowed to take in up to 3 million gallons a day of wastewater and treat it. But it is only allowed, the permit only allows 2.5 million gallons a day of discharge. So functionally, there's really only there's a 2.5 million gallon a day cap, because obviously you can't treat water without the ability to discharge it. Currently, the permit requires that the first 1.75 MGD be discharged to the harbor outfall, and that only flows above that up to 0.75 MGD are allowed to go to the discharge beds at the Camelot Drive wastewater treatment facility. The goal of this project is to increase the total capacity, the discharge capacity, to match the treatment capacity, so that both are in alignment at 3 million gallons a day, to allow for future growth and expansion of the sewer service area. get some houses off of septics, and also allow for new development to come into town within the sewer service area. And also to reverse the prioritization of how this treated effluent is discharged, to allow the first discharge or at any point to allow discharge to the groundwater beds at Camelot Drive, even before you've hit that 1.75 MGD outfall that is currently in the permit. So why is this being proposed? So benefits on the left, potential impacts on the right. So the discharge, the outfall of treated effluent to the harbor that's currently there has been there for a very long time, probably pre-70s. I guess I don't even know how long that existing outfall has been there for. It's kind of archaic. There hasn't been a new outfall created in Massachusetts since the one in Boston when the Deer Harbor treatment plant was constructed. Most people are trying to get away from that. So the harbor and the beach and the associated area is a valuable commodity for residents and visitors alike in Plymouth, for recreation, for aquaculture, etc. Wastewater is also actually, it's not a completely not desirable thing. It's a valuable commodity. Water is important, right? So putting water back into the aquifer through groundwater recharge is important for keeping groundwater levels up. One benefit of that is that permitting for new drinking water withdrawals in the state requires mitigation to offset those withdrawals. So by putting this wastewater back into the ground in the aquifer, that is one-to-one mitigation for any future needed increases in drinking water supply withdrawals from a regulatory and permitting perspective. Also, more water in the aquifer provides increased base flow to surface waters such as the Eel River during drought and dry periods. And there's also a modest reduction in energy usage to discharge at the plant as opposed to having to pump over the hill down into the harbor. On the impact side, we had to look at groundwater mounding. Groundwater mounding is how the groundwater rises as a result of this discharge, and make sure that we weren't going to be impacting septic systems, basements, and infrastructure in the river. That has been done with minimal impacts noted and mitigation available to deal with that. Of course, we're concerned about private drinking water wells. There are no public drinking water wells within the receiving area of this discharge. There are private wells. Most of the private wells in the area came onto the public system in the late 90s, early 2000s after the plant came online. There's a few that haven't. They all can be and will be at town expense as a result of this project. And the big one, of course, which is why I think everyone in this room is here, is the increased nutrient loading to the Eel River system, which is, unavoidable, right? Clearly, there's nutrients associated in wastewater. It's going to go into the ground at Camelot Drive. That treated effluent and groundwater is going to travel to the Eel River system, carrying those nutrients with it. So that is the big, all of the permitting, all of the analysis that's been done to date and will continue to be done is focusing on that as the most important impact to be evaluated. So where we are, I mentioned that we have been through the environmental notification form phase of the MEPA process. That's completed. We're now about to go into the second phase, which is called an environmental impact report. In this case, we will have a draft one, which is about to be submitted. And after comment is submitted on that, there'll be a final one. So tonight is the EJ public meeting. And as you look here, so we've advertised that, again, as required, we advertised to all the environmental justice contacts that MEPA provided us, plus everyone who directly abuts the Eel River to let them know about this meeting. So we're going to talk a little bit, we already talked about the overall project details. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the updated nutrient loading data, so that these other things, again, are all MEPA requirements. Then the updated alternatives analysis, the monitoring plan, and some details about the environmental justice community that was conducted. So now the updates. So updates are as of end of 2024. So the initial ENF was submitted in 2021. So the requirement from the ENF certificate was to update to 2024, which is at the time that we received that. So what this graph is showing is in blue, the harbor outfall, and in orange, the groundwater discharge bed. So this is the amount of water being applied to those two places. And you can see that for most of the duration since the late 90s when the plant was built, nearly all the wastewater was discharged to the harbor. This place here where suddenly the harbor drops and the beds increase, this was the sewer main break that occurred in 2015, 2016. A very big deal, cost something like $50 million to remedy. Then you go back to more in the harbor. This point right here, where the groundwater goes up and the harbor goes down, is a loading test we conducted at the treatment plant for this project. So we put all of the available wastewater for a period of about a month and a half into the beds and monitored and wells all over the place how the groundwater responded, and used that to inform our analysis of the potential impacts from groundwater mounding on the area. And then lastly, in recent years, you can see again where the harbor outfall went down and the discharge went up. And that was a result of several process-based stuff going on at the plant, repairs, and experimenting with new disinfection technologies. So that's the effluent situation. Nutrient-wise, so this is the trend of annualized average nitrogen and phosphorus concentrations over time, with nitrogen orange and phosphorus in purple. And you can see that they're fairly consistent. They started high, got a little better, and they've kind of more recently have gotten better still. But the overall average is about 4.3 milligrams per liter of phosphorus and a little less than 6 milligrams per liter of nitrogen. This is probably a good point to discuss one of the important things with these two nutrients here. They behave differently in groundwater. So nitrogen moves essentially at the same rate as groundwater. It just goes through the ground, same rate groundwater is flowing. Phosphorus binds to the sand particles in the aquifer, and its transport is greatly slowed in comparison to groundwater. Also, the type of algae that are living off of these nutrients are different in freshwater and saltwater systems. So saltwater algae is limited and by limited I mean the more of this thing, particular nutrient, the more that algae will grow. So saltwater are limited by nitrogen. So you put more nitrogen into the system, you will get more eutrophication, more algal growth in saltwater systems. Freshwater is the opposite. Phosphorus is the thing that will trigger the eutrophication. So the fact that phosphorus binds to the sand and is slowed in its movement is really important here, because the Eel River obviously is being a freshwater system for nearly its entire length, is a phosphorus limited system. That binding of the phosphorus to the sediment buys decades of time before that phosphorus actually reaches the Eel River. We're going to talk a little bit more about sampling results for those two nutrients. And this map is just showing the extensive monitoring plan, monitoring points that the town samples regularly, monthly, I believe, or quarterly in some cases. The wells here on the right, and then on the left is a kind of a mixed map that includes the surface water points as well as some of the wells. And now we'll get into some of the results here. So nitrogen. This map that looks a little bit like a Jackson Pollock painting, what we're trying to show here, this light blue line is the cumulative amount of effluent discharged at the beds. So it gets bigger year by year, because obviously each year a little bit more is applied. So it's a semi-straight line showing more and more effluent discharged at the beds. These other squiggly lines are all nitrogen concentrations at various wells. These ones down here, the red and the yellow, are up gradient of the beds. So they're kind of keeping fairly low and not a whole lot of change going on over time there. These other ones are down gradient. And you can see their nitrogen concentration jumps up to something approximating what I said was in the effluent, a little less than 6. These are approaching 5 milligrams per liter. So the nitrogen that's being discharged at the beds is being seen in the wells immediately down gradient, to no one's surprise. Phosphorus, this is where things get interesting, and I mentioned how they behave differently, how phosphorus behaves differently than nitrogen with binding to the sand. So again, the light blue line is cumulative loading, cumulative discharge at the beds there. And then the gray line is one well, A8, that is immediately under the center of the beds. This mishmash that you can't really see anything distinct is every other well. So the other wells haven't seen any of that phosphorus into them as of the end of 2024 as a result of that binding of the phosphorus to the sand. So in this case, it's binding actually in the unsaturated zone above the aquifer as the water's trying to work its way down. So the only well that has seen phosphorus as of yet is this one immediately here, A8, which again, you can see has responding, and it's now having concentrations that are roughly what the effluent is, 4 point something there. And to just reinforce that correlation, so this is a trend of, again, cumulative effluent discharge versus total phosphorus concentration in A8. And this line is a regression equation, statistics to that. And this number, R squared equals 0.78, indicates a good correlation between how much wastewater has been discharged and what the concentration of phosphorus is in well A8. So the more effluent that gets discharged, the higher the phosphorus concentration. Again, no surprise. Next part of the required MEPA process for this meeting is a increased discussion of alternatives. And there were a couple that were specifically laid out in the ENF certificate that DEP provided, and we'll get into those. So the first alternative, of course, is the one we're here to discuss, the preferred alternative of using the beds, the existing beds at the treatment facility. The benefits, obviously the benefits to the harbor that we talked about before, and then the other benefits kind of listed here, most importantly, being that, there's no new infrastructure needed. Everything is there. There's no cost for this project. It's literally flip a switch and this occurs. The drinking water impacts can be dealt with simply with tying a couple more properties into the town water. We've talked again about how there's not a whole lot of infrastructure impacts, and we're talking at length about the impacts to the Eel River. And again, the key here is that slow movement of phosphorus through the aquifer. That's a major benefit for us. Other alternatives that were required for us to look at are the so-called Site 101 on Somerset Street, kind of in the Algonquin Heights, Walgreens area. That was looked at originally when the plant was built in the late 90s and not chosen. And then DP also asked about the Cold Spring School. So Site 101, assessed in the 90s and not selected. And it wasn't selected for these reasons, that the modeling suggested that the groundwater mounding that would occur there would be too much. It would impact public drinking water wells in Plymouth and Kingston, and raise the waters in several ponds by several feet. After that, more recently, we went back and reran the model to protect our own mounding and got high results there as well. That suggests that you couldn't put anywhere near the 3 million gallons a day that we're proposing at the Camelot Drive facility at this site. Cold Spring School is even worse. Small site, not nearly big enough, nowhere near the same size as the Camelot Drive disposal beds. It's obviously got a school on it, a still functional school that's being used. And when we ran this discharge in the groundwater model, the mound came over the surface and flooded things out. No way that this site can receive anywhere near the amount of water that we're talking about. So then we were asked to just go search around in general elsewhere. So there's some limitations on where you can go. So this red line is showing the transmission mains that take water. So water, currently sewerage comes downhill by gravity, gets collected at the old treatment facility down on Water Street, and then pumped uphill to the new treatment facility. And then the same path is taken to get to the outfall for the treated effluent discharge. So any place that you'd want to do another discharge has to be within reasonable striking distance of this line. If we're going to stay out of the Eel River watershed, which is this blue line, that pushes you in this direction because of Billington Sea and all these wetlands and so forth. You're essentially limited to the downtown area and kind of the northern-western part of Plymouth. And in that area, we only identified 2 parcels big enough to accept this discharge. So parcels of the same size as the Camelot Drive disposal beds. Both are privately owned, and both have their own issues. So this one on Orchard Hill Road is in another public drinking water well zone 2. And this one, Jackson's Lane, is immediately adjacent to Town Brook. So it would have all the same issues with regard to the Eel River, this time for Town Brook, only worse because it's closer. So then the next thing that was requested to be looked at is extending the harbor outfall. There's a lot of issues with this. So down here in this map, this is the exclusion habitat zone for the northern right whale. So this doesn't mean you can't put an outfall in right whale habitat, but it does mean that the requirements to do so are significantly more stricter and more onerous than if you were not in the right whale habitat. And the distance from Plymouth to get outside of this is like 95 miles. So that's thing one. This map is now showing, as a result of the Ocean Sanctuary Act, you are not allowed to build an outfall in less than 30-foot depth at low tide. And within this area, in order to get that outside of the navigation channel, you have to get past this red line of the Gurnet to essentially the where the Pilgrim power plant is. So again, that's a very long distance. You would have to directional drill under the beach, directional drill to avoid navigation impacts. Very expensive, very time consuming, not a viable, feasible alternative. The other thing that was required from the MEPA certificate to discuss in our draft EIR and at this meeting tonight is mitigation measures. So these are outlined here. First step are the current ones, things that are occurring now and will remain. So that's this nutrient management plan monitoring. That's all those wells and surface gauges that I showed earlier. That will continue. Proposed is to add 8 additional monitoring wells. And these are these bullseye symbols here. And they're placed kind of as sentry wells. So the closest, there's this, let me explain a little bit here. So this map is showing particles, model particles leaving the discharge beds and flowing in a radial fashion, following groundwater flow outwards, downhill on the gravity. And you can see the closest place where those particles, and particles are a proxy for wastewater effluent. The closest place is Warren Wells Brook. So that's something like 1,400 feet. And so we propose these pairs of staged monitoring wells to track that movement of phosphorus through the aquifer. As I mentioned before, the movement of phosphorus is greatly slowed. So with this, we'll be able to tell at X number of years, the phosphorus may have shown up here. At Y number of years, it might have shown up here, and allow for adaptive management along the way of how treatment might be changed, how other processes that might occur before that phosphorus actually reaches Warren Wells Brook, which is the closest part of the Eel River system here. Other mitigation proposed is upgrade treatment capacity at the plant for tertiary treatment, which would allow for advanced nutrient treatment, get those, instead of discharging phosphorus in the 4-point-something range, get it down to something much lower. Instead of nitrogen up in the 5-point-something range, get it down to something lower. Also, the proposal is to phase in the increase of groundwater discharge over years. so that we can, again, monitor how this whole thing is responding and see if there's any issues and react accordingly along the way. And of course, we had one private septic system we've identified as a potential issue that can be replaced. Any others that are at risk can be replaced. And the 1 or 2 drinking water wells that we've identified that are still in play in the area of effluent transport can also be connected into the town water system. The last required component is this to discuss is, why we're actually here tonight is this environmental justice community. So we are in, you can read all the legal language of the census block group we're in. But essentially what the community is a little less than 40% minority according to the census. It does not meet the income criteria. It's the income is in excess of those requirements and the language isolation is 0. So this is the trigger of why we're even here tonight is this close to 40% minority population, which is largely the prison. The other thing we have to talk about as part of this is you have to list out the sources of pollution. And this is just from the web pull out of database of potential pollution things that are in this area. You can see them all listed. These are just the things that that come up when you search for pollution sources in the area of this census block. And that's the end of the presentation. So we will open it up to questions and comments.
Thank you, Neil. Yeah, we will open it up for questions and comments, but I just want to reiterate that we're going to do our best to answer any questions you might have, but we will also encourage you to submit those through the MEPA process, and we will have that link on the town's website so that you can do that. Again, I'm sure there's a lot of folks here as well that want to be heard, so we're going to limit comments to 3 minutes. And that way there we can try to get through everybody. All right, and with that, we'll open it up. Who would like to, any questions? Questions, comments, anyone? Sure, please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mary Jo Gautzlick, and I'm speaking tonight here as a resident of Plymouth. I also live on Jordan Road, and I abut the Yellow River. After reviewing the draft environmental impact report, or DEIR, I have several concerns regarding the adequacy, completeness, and technical basis of this document. First, the DEIR relies heavily on groundwater modeling that appears to be based on a 2018 loading test conducted during unusually dry conditions. It is unclear whether the model adequately reflects current site conditions, including changes in land use, sand and gravel extraction activities, deforestation, and the expansion of impervious surfaces. Given the importance of groundwater mounding predictions to this project, I believe that assumptions and calibration methods require additional scrutiny and validation using current data. Second, the DEIR acknowledges the earlier phosphorus sampling results may have been affected by laboratory and preservation methods that artificially evaluated or elevated phosphorus concentrations. However, this report does not clearly establish a corrected and reliable baseline data set. If the underlying baseline data are uncertain, then the predictive modeling and conclusions regarding the nutrient transport may also be uncertain. Third, the document does not appear to adequately address the effects of climate change, including increased precipitation, flooding potential, and changes to groundwater conditions. These factors should be incorporated into the analysis, particularly for a project that could have long-term impacts on groundwater resources in nearby surface waters. I am also concerned that portions of the DEIR rely on outdated baseline information, including data from the 1990s and 2020. MEPA review is intended to evaluate projects using current site-specific information. The use of older data raises questions about whether the environmental baseline accurately reflects present conditions. In addition, the environmental justice section appears incomplete. The outreach efforts described in the report do not appear to have meaningfully engaged several local organizations that have been actively involved in watershed and environmental issues. Furthermore, the report assumes access to public water supplies without fully evaluating whether environmental justice populations may rely on private wells that could be affected by groundwater impacts. Finally, I'm concerned by the number of editorial issues, placeholder text, incomplete references, and formatting errors that remain throughout the document. These issues create impression that portions of the DEIR may not yet be ready for final public review and make it more difficult for the public to evaluate the proposal. In closing, I respectfully request that these technical, regulatory, environmental justice, and data quality concerns be fully addressed before the environmental review process moves forward. The public deserves a complete, accurate, and technically sound analysis of the potential impacts for this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rose Forbes. I'm a Plymouth resident, business owner right next to the wastewater treatment plant, as well as a member of the Citizens Advisory Committee for this particular topic. Just clarification, are you answering questions tonight, or are we just throwing the questions out and you answer them at some other point?
We can try to answer as what
Okay.
we can, yes.
Okay, good. So the monitoring wells that you mentioned between the wastewater treatment plant and Warren Wells Brook, when do you intend to install those?
Don't have to hold it, no. Prior to the, after the permitting is received and prior to the switch occurring, so that there's baseline data collected before any, the increased change that's proposed here occurs.
So roughly month, year?
Yeah, I mean, we're years into the permitting already, and, you know, we're got a ways to go still, so.
Are you able to install them sooner rather than later?
I can say that, Rose, as you know, we're trying to do a lot of improvements at the treatment plant, and I know that that is on my radar to install sooner than later.
Could you speak a little bit more loud?
Sorry. As you know, Rose, that we are trying to do some improvements at the treatment plant, and this is part of the mitigation process, and my plan is to install those sooner than later. When exactly, I couldn't tell you, because I haven't even put it on town meeting for funding approval.
Okay, so installation of monitoring wells and the data really aren't part of mitigation though, right? They're data that you collect in order to update your model or determine baseline information. They don't really mitigate a problem. Okay, that's just a statement. So what analysis are you planning on collecting in those monitoring wells? What groundwater data? Are you collecting hydraulic data as well?
Currently, the intention was to do all the same monitoring that occurs throughout for the nutrient monitoring plan at all the other wells. So it just gives you more, there's a gap in that network in between the plant and Warren Wells Brook that this would fill, and it would fill, you know, more completely than even the other wells, because it's been identified now as the primary flow path.
Exactly. Yes. So, so you've been talking about phosphorus and nitrogen, and, you know, I have to ask, what about the other contaminants that we know are in wastewater effluent? So effluent that you're going to be discharging into the beds that are going to go into the, that are going to flow through where those proposed wells are and into Warren Wells Brook. So things like, I'm talking about PFAS and pharmaceuticals, hormones, microplastics, illicit drugs, et cetera. So are you planning on sampling those groundwater wells for those things, or even the influent effluent of the treatment plant?
Let me start, and I'm sure Doug might want to fill in. So the town, like any town or any facility, can only do, reasonably be expected to do what the regulations require, and those things are not part of the current regulations. And further, and most importantly, and this is, I'm kind of glad you brought this up, because what this issue is about is just where the effluent is discharged. So whatever is in it contaminant-wise or constituent-wise is in it, and it's going somewhere. So the question just is, well, where is it better to go in terms of, so in this case, the time that's allowed, what the particular nutrients are, and the receiving waters and what they're sensitive to, as opposed to, so, okay, if there is and there probably is, as you know, there's PFAS virtually everywhere, so there probably is PFAS in the wastewater.
There is.
And the reason that the state isn't requiring that is probably that reason, because if every treatment plant in the state started sampling for PFAS, every treatment plant in the state would have PFAS, and then what would you do about it? So is it better or worse for the PFAS to be going into the harbor where people are swimming as opposed to going into the Eel River and where there's no drinking water? I don't know. I don't know.
Excuse me, if you
Hold-
could
hold
please
on.
wait till public comment for you to go up there. We want to keep this as civil as possible, please.
So understand what you're saying, that you're only required to sample for what's in your permit. But if you're going to be protective, don't you think you should know? Because there are indicators, like the Mass Septic Test Center. They know that there are other contaminants in wastewater. And wastewater treatment plant treats wastewater coming in from other places as well as the hospital. So it's more than just PFAS that would be my concern. And yes, it's a concern whether it goes to the harbor outfall or the groundwater, and also Warren Wells Brook. But remember too, there's more than 1 or 2 private wells down gradient. There's at least 9 on East Russell Mills Road. There's 16 to 19, I don't know exactly the number, on Kingfisher Way. And there's 5 more that Ms. Martin had mentioned during our meetings. So I just want to point that out, that there are other private
Are all of
wells out
those
there.
roads on this side of the river? Kingfisher Road is on the.
No, Kingfisher Road is on the other side of Russell Mills Pond, I realize this. But knowing that the contamination could be in Russell Mills Pond, those people living close to the pond are probably drawing in pond water for drinking water. So the town really should evaluate that. You know, we found that to be the case with the military reservation. It was a surprise to me, and I know I want to save time for other people, but that is a concern that should be looked at. Thank you.
I would like the following comments recorded in the public involvement report. I am Sandra Enos of Russell Mills Road and was on the very first CAC commission with Skip Nickerson of the Gilbert Trout Hatchery, a historical site, as it is the oldest continuously operated trout hatchery in the United States. Not so much since the sewer plant went in. There is a riparian restriction on Russell Mill Pond that give the owners the water rights to the dam up to the headwaters, which is Warren Wells. A hydroelectric turbine was installed and has generated electricity 24/7 since 1981. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission permit 6429. The engineering firm of C.E. McGuire, who stated, "Do not build a plant at this site," clearly noted that the owners of the dam gives them control over all rights of flowage through the dam and necessitates consultation with them regarding possible flow augmentation by application of wastewater at the site. Why hasn't this been done? Why hasn't this been addressed? We are so under capacity, the town accepts sewage from out of town to process. Contaminants such as insulin, PFAS, E. coli have been detected in Warren's Wells Brook. Warren's Wells, the headwaters of Eel River, Russell Mill Pond, and our aquifer is located a short distance from the sewer plant. At one time, Poland Springs wanted this site as the water was so pristine. Why is there so much contamination now, and why has the environmental damage to the Gilbert Trout Hatchery not been addressed? Mr. Coyle refused to give out the amount of sewage taken in from out of town and how much was charged. He finally said 7 cents a gallon because We have to stay competitive. There is no testing of the sewage, so why are we taking in contaminated medical, commercial, and residential sewage at the expense of the residents and the environment? If we do not take in sewage from out of town, we would not need this upgrade. The Citizens Advisory Committee, which included a member who was responsible for cleanup of Joint Cape Cod, recommended not going forward with this project. Why appoint a committee and disregard its findings? And the residents of Kingfisher Drive and East Russell Mills Road are on wells and will be impacted by this. Why were they not notified of the meeting? Thank you.
Sorry. Yes, again, we will try to answer any direct questions that you may have, but we also would prefer those questions be asked through the MEPA process so we can officially have those addressed.
Could you repeat that, please? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
That's okay. That's okay, sorry. If somebody needs assistant hearing devices, we have them if you do need them, but I'll try to speak up. So yes, we will try to answer some questions, but again, in the process of trying to get all the questions and everyone heard, I said earlier in the meeting, we're going to have the link to the MEPA process so we can, you have those questions submitted to the MEPA process so we can officially answer those. So we will be moving forward, submitting the draft, and when that process is, when we do submit the draft, we will put the link to the MEPA site for the comment period on the town's website.
I'm sorry, can you go speak into a microphone? It's being recorded.
My name is Patricia Ames, and I currently live at Russell Mills Road. And what I'd like to know, if you can explain to the audience how they go about submitting their questions to make sure that they are recognized and addressed in the MEPA document. Are you just going to be posting it on your website the day before the document is published? Are you going to be giving people advance notice? Will you be notifying them by mail? How are you going to send registered letters saying that, you know, people need to submit their questions by a certain date? How is this going to be handled?
So we can certainly advertise the date that we'll be submitting the draft ahead of time to let folks know that it's going to be submitted. And then also let them know that we'll have a link on the website directly to that page so they can submit those comments so we can address those.
If I may add, Doug, is this perhaps one use of the sign-in sheet tonight that those folks who signed in can get an email notification of that as well?
If that's the case, if people that did sign in would like a notification, I can certainly do that as well.
Good evening, folks. My name is Dave Golden. I'm a member of the Plymouth Select Board. I was also the chair of the Citizens Advisory Committee. I just wanted to come up and say I'll ask that Doug come and present to the Select Board too in advance of publishing the document or submitting the document, and also he can work with the town manager to include it in the town's social media presence to let folks know when the question and answer period is open. Thank you.
I'll probably have more questions after this, but just clarifying, so for the record, I'm Mark Withington. I'm the president of the Eel River Watershed Association. It's my understanding that for the environmental justice meeting that we're having now, that there is a specific public involvement report that is compiled for all these questions that need to be asked. And that's separate from the public comments after the report is submitted. Is that accurate? And do we, for the sake of the individual taking notes, do we have to formally request that our questions be included in the public involvement report?
I don't know the answer to if there is a separate public involvement report that comes out of this thing. We'll look into that. But this is being recorded, and my colleague Casey is taking notes. So
Frantically.
very, very well. So we do have, Mark, we do have the ability to, yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm Darlene Nickerson. I operate the Gilbert Trout Hatchery and the Black Feather Horse Rescue. My well for my horses is already contaminated. I have sick animals. I've lost one to cancer. I have another one with cancer. I have to put in a $6,500 filter system. Can you pay for that? That's one well. It's not the well that my fish are on. It's not the well that I drink. I'm losing fish too. I got baby fish and they're dying. Why is that? Can you help me pay for the testing to figure out what's wrong? Can you help me figure out how to fix it so you don't put me out of business? Because it's a historic hatchery. You can think about that.
Good evening. My name is Susan Erickson. I live on 19 Tilly Crescent in Plymouth. I do not currently live on Russell Mills Pond. I am a supporter of the Eel River Water Association, however, and the Chiltonville group. I'm particularly focused on the word justice, and I appreciate the fact that Darlene Nickerson just spoke ahead of me. It seems to me that the project proponents are pushing the protection of oyster beds and shellfish in Plymouth Harbor. As far as I know, the harbor currently is not negatively impacting this activity. Has Plymouth been out of compliance? Yes, no? I didn't think so, but I'm not up on it like you are. So no, they are not. Are there any oyster fishermen who have gone out of business? Because as with Ms. Nickerson, she's losing. Do you know of any? Have any come to you and said they're suffering?
No.
Mr. Bernard, Mr.
No.
Price?
No.
Okay. And yet we have an example of a resident who lives within, 1,400 feet of that plant, her wells, and she's already suffering. So in my opinion, as a resident of the town of Plymouth, and involved with the water quality here, it seems to me that a community government that chooses to take an action to reduce or eliminate a problem in one area of town and simply push it in another area, that's really looking bad. And I would say that is unjust. There are other commercial activities that will suffer, but you're just moving the mess around. The quality of the water already has been downgraded. It has hurt people along the way. It doesn't seem like it makes sense to even consider something like closing the outfall pipe. Is that the plan, to close the outfall pipe?
No, we would keep the outfall pipe.
Would you use it as much or even half as much?
We would just have it. We wouldn't remove the permit. We'd keep the permit for the outfall.
But you didn't answer my question. Would you use it
If we
as
need-
much, half
No.
as much?
No.
Then you are truly shifting the burden. So you're not responding in
Again,
any way
please, if
to
you
my-
have questions from the audience, go up to a microphone when it's your turn, because it is being recorded, so we can't pick up those questions through PAC TV.
So to try to answer your question.
Okay.
If we went through groundwater discharge, we would not remove the outfall. The outfall would stay.
And yet, so far, the surface treatment of effluent in that location in Camelot Park has never yet been used on a regular basis for 3 million gallons per day.
No.
So how do you know it's going to work as well as having 2 operations? You're just hoping that your selection for mitigation, the additional wells between Ms. Nickerson's property and so forth, what are you going to do if her situation gets worse? What are you going to do if the people who live on that street on the other side of Russell Mills Pond, or the one down the road, or East Russell Mills, or anybody, all of a sudden, they've got problems? Are you going to pay for Ms. Nickerson's testing, or are you going to pay to fix their problems down the road? These plans have to be there in writing and supported by the government of the town, that people are recommending this significant proposal and change to that area before anything goes any farther. It's the justice of it. You're asking everyone to simply wait. I don't live there. Hey, I don't have to worry, but I'm worried because this is an area I chose to move to, and it's beautiful. I would like my comments and questions included in the public report. Is it Cassie? And thank you for your time.
Would you like to come up, sir? Yes.
Hi, good evening. I'm Matt Hoagland. I live in Plymouth. And I just had a couple statements, and then I'll ask you if you can just correct me if I say something that's incorrect, okay? And then we can move on with, I'll have a question at the end. But the discharge from the plant lands in the rapid infiltration beds. It flows downward into a sole source aquifer, correct? That's correct, right?
Correct.
It's a sole source aquifer, federally designated sole source aquifer, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then that water discharges into the Eel River, which is a state-recognized cold water fishery resource, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and the Eel River itself, we would not say it's pristine right now in its current state.
Correct.
Okay, and in fact, it's impaired.
Correct.
Okay. And when you put a statement up at the beginning, you talked about one of the advantages here was to improve water quality to the harbor. You also stated that the discharge from the beds would increase base flows to the river, to the Eel River, right?
Correct.
Okay. Are the base flows to the river going to improve or degrade the Eel River?
From a perspective of low flow conditions and fish passage and cold water fishery resources during drought, dry periods, it would improve the river conditions.
Okay. And how about other times?
Well, the whole point of base flow is it's all about dry. That's what base flow
Okay.
is.
Now, would there be any improvement at all to the Eel River? It would be further degraded from nutrients through this process?
There's no doubt that more nutrients equals some amount of increased algal growth and degradation to the Eel River over time. How much is a very open question.
Okay, and so, but when the Eel River discharges into the bay, the water quality to the bay will be improved.
Can you say that again?
The water quality going into the bay from the Eel River will be improved once this is up and running. And once flows are entering the Eel River then flows into the bay will there be an improved water quality? Will the Eel River help to improve water quality in the bay?
This project overall will improve water quality in the harbor. Whether the Eel River component of the, like, if you were to compare the current Eel River component to the proposed future Eel River component, I don't know if I have the answer to that, but overall, if you took all of the components that go to the harbor, Eel River included, it would be beneficial as a result of this project.
Is it fair to say that by adding nutrients to the Eel River, that in essence, that's part of the treatment process to improve water quality in the harbor? Or in other words, is the Eel River in some way being sacrificed or degraded for the improvement of the harbor?
So the second part of that was a loaded question that I'm gonna resist
start with the
answering.
first and then let's go to the loaded. Okay.
The first part is yes, that's part of the rationale here, is that additional treatment is received by this path of going through the aquifer, through all the vegetated wetlands surrounding the Eel River, through the Eel River and all of its ponds and impoundments before it gets to the harbor. So that's a recognized improved treatment capacity that occurs through that travel path as opposed to the direct outfall to the harbor. That's one of the reasons why this project is being done.
Okay, so you consider the Eel River to be part of the treatment process, essentially?
Yes.
Okay.
But you're, again, a loaded question, you're making it sound like it's an industrial treatment process. This happens at all rivers everywhere and all wetlands and so forth. The microbes and the plants and so forth in those things use the nutrients that are in the water. It's part of their life cycle. It's part of how this all works. So it's not I resist the negative implication of the statement that you're trying to imply while agreeing to the factual content.
Not sure what you said, but okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Good. My name's Don Holm, and I live on Russell Mill Road, on Jordan Road on the pond. I'm here to offer my perspective and encourage open dialogue as we work together to protect shared resources and plan for the future. I'd like my comments to be formally recorded in the public involvement report. I am concerned, like a number of my neighbors, that the CAC advice to the Select Board was rejected, and many of the questions on the internal DEIR were not adequately addressed. The observations and recommendations raised by the CAC and summarized by member Rose Forbes in the letter to the Select Board dated 3/3/26 are integral and needed for a comprehensive study and plans to satisfy the highest standards of any wastewater discharge into the ground, treatment pits, or the harbor. Two specific concerns. One is that the town has a value proposition to generate greater revenue by increasing the throughput of trucked in untreated liquid waste from towns and commercial transporters. That current annual revenue stream into the town is estimated to $1.87 million. Added capacity likely will justify importing more trucked in waste. Do we want to support this type of business model? Adding 100,000 to 250,000 more waste gallons of waste daily discharged into our streams, ponds, and the harbor, all under the guise of needed added capacity. Number two, do we know from the trucked in waste generators what exactly is in the waste treatment? Are we treating unknowingly PFAS, pharmaceuticals, heavy metal contaminants? And why are we accepting liquid waste and sludge from other states? Who has authorized that? Are there safeguard standards that we can require on the trucked in waste generators? In conclusion, will the town prepare to become a model for providing the highest standards to treat and discharge wastewater here in Massachusetts, or will we redesign our treatment plant to avoid the cost and down to the bare minimum. I believe the town has a duty to provide the best wastewater treatment facility that will protect the future generations for both aquifers, streams, ponds, the watershed, and our harbor. Thank you.
I'm Dan Ennis. I live on Russell Mill Pond. Been there for 85 years. My family has been there for 135 years. I have some questions on his mitigation you talk about. Town of Plymouth is not very reliable when it comes to mitigation. Half of the mitigation measures that were specified for the existing plant have never been done. And my question is, how dependable you guys are going to be for mitigating problems that are definitely going to come up? We operate a hydroelectric system at the outfall of Russell Mill Pond. The outfall of Russell Mill Pond came up in the mitigation measures when this plant was built. The outfall to Russell Mill Pond was supposed to be replaced and enlarged because of the increase in flow. I hear nothing of that from you. Also, in mitigation, the weed growth in Russell Mill Pond, are you planning on having an individual there every day to clean out the weeds from the outfall? Because I have seen the weeds in the outfall completely stop flowage at Russell Mill Pond in recent years. Also, haven't heard anything about flowage rights, water rights. I know in this part of the world, nobody seems to know a hell of a lot about water rights. The water rights out in the West, they shoot over water rights in the West. There's an owner to the water rights and the flowage rights and the dam rights to Russell Mill Pond. Have you consulted with a legal counsel over this situation? Because I don't think the owners of Russell Mill Pond have to accept this as such, an increase of that significance in the flowage or the damage. And I know for a fact from past experience that if there's a problem at the dam, it's on the owner. And back to the mitigation, part of the mitigation was also for the town of Plymouth to renovate, rebuild the fishway that is presently on the outfall of Russell Mill Pond. Well, when we got to that point, town of Plymouth ran out of money. Imagine that. No mitigation. The engineers claimed that the projected cost of fixing that fish ladder was in the neighborhood of $600,000. Town of Plymouth didn't have the money. So they talked the owner into doing that mitigation for him and gave him $150,000 to help him out. The rest of the mitigation still has not been done. Also to the mitigation, it was specified that the tankage, the exposed tankage at the sewer treatment plant was supposed to be covered. To this day, they have not been covered. And part of the structure to cover them is still laying on the ground behind the sewer treatment plant. What is your plan for covering those open pits? Or is there one? I personally think this whole plan is just bogus from word go. They built this plant, extended the waterway a little more out into the harbor, turned around and built a mega millions of dollars jetty all the way almost across the harbor to keep the inflow from coming back into the inner harbor. So what are we going to do? We're going to double the inflow and we're going to put it in the inner harbor. If that makes sense to somebody, boy, I'll shake their hand. when water flows, it takes the easiest route from A to Z, the easiest route. There is no way that that water is going to mix with the aquifer. It's going to ride on the surface. More than likely, it will be some mixing. Just in my experience of fixing people's roofs. Water takes the easiest route when you got a leak. Also, you talk about helping out the aquifer. Well, if that's true, why did the town of Plymouth tear out a dam upstream on the Eel River? And in doing so, lowered the aquifer by probably 8 feet over the course of 10 or 12 years. That's a little bit,
How much more time would you like?
excuse me?
How much more time would you need?
Oh, I could go on for all night.
I know, I'm trying to make sure
I
that
mean,
everybody
you
has
know,
enough time.
we've lived with this and put up with this BS for 40 years. It's time that you guys smartened up, or time somebody smartened up. 2 companies of civil engineers have told the town of Plymouth, do not put effluent in the Eel River watershed. And the town of Plymouth paid them several $1 million to be told that. And what? We're right back here talking about the same damn thing in the same place. Nothing has changed there environmentally to make a difference that we should put it there. You can put it in the ocean. We don't drink the damn ocean,
Thank you,
okay?
thank you.
Well, if you, that's up to you. You want to drink the ocean. We don't.
I'm
We
gonna open it
also-
up to
what
somebody
happens-
else. Mr. Enos.
What happens with
Mr.
people
Enos,
that
I'm gonna
have
try to keep the
gardens?
meeting going. I'm gonna try to, I can circle back with you, but I want to make sure that everybody else has a chance to speak.
Fine. That's why I
So-
waited till the end. Okay?
Well, it's not the end.
All right, I still have more questions. What do you tell
Thank you.
people that have vegetable gardens and irrigate their lawns with water out of Eel River?
We're gonna move
My
on.
son won't even allow his grandchildren to go in the pond now. He can't put the water on his lawn anymore because he doesn't feel comfortable with it. We have vegetable
Mr. Enos,
gardens,
again,
been
we're
vegetable
gonna
gardens
move
there
on. I'd
forever.
like, there's other people that would like to speak, so we're gonna
Okay.
try to address them.
Well,
If we have
none
time,
of this
I will
has
circle
been
back with you.
addressed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else? Yes.
Thanks very much. Again, my name is Mark Withington, and I will ask that this is formally recorded in the public involvement report. So I think I'm standing in opposition to moving forward with this. And the underlying concern has been and remains that the Citizens Advisory Committee that met a number of times over an extended period of times, the general consensus that I felt was they didn't feel they were getting answers to their questions. To the extent that when they made their presentation to the select board, the vice chair, Rose Forbes, documented all of the questions and concerns. There are 8 pages. I'm not going to read them. I'm happy to hand them to the person typing them in. Of all the items that were brought up that the Citizens Advisory Committee did not feel had been answered. And so I guess I'm going to ask the question of why we, the citizens, the CAC, didn't get those answers. I would I would ask the town to answer those questions. I'd like to know when we'll answer the questions. And then finally, it seems to me that unlike when this plant was first put in, when the town was under a consent decree because it had been violating its permitting, no such issue is happening today. There is no rush that we need to get this done. I think we need to get the CAC comfortable by answering these questions before we can move forward. So with that, I'm going to submit these questions, and I thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Kendra, do we have anyone online?
Kevin Enos is online. Kevin, if you want to unmute yourself, you can go ahead.
Can you hear me? Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. The first question I have is with the first slide that you posted 5 benefits to land application as opposed to like 3 negative impacts. I think after listening to all these people tonight that you probably know that that's not accurate. There was another comment that was made that by the gentleman who said, what is better, PFAS in the Bay or PFAS in the Eel River? Do you not think that PFAS, once it's in the Eel River, is going to end up back in the Bay? That was a question.
Yes.
It will. Okay, so what is better, PFAS in the Bay or PFAS in both bodies of water?
I'm not sure that this is the time to be talking about a constituent that isn't even part of the program here. I mean, I don't know what to say about
What do you mean?
this. Yeah, I mean, I think if you have people who have issues with the regulations for wastewater, those issues go to the state, I guess, in terms of wastewater regulations. The town is simply trying to do their job to deal with it within the bounds of those regulations to their ability.
But I didn't make that comment. You made it. Okay, so to move on, you talked about the mounding effects at Site 101 on North Plymouth and Kingston. What about the mounding effects that are going to occur in Camelot Park, with the headwaters of the Eel River being a mere 1,200 feet from those discharge beds? What you're proposing has an enormous environmental impact. Has anyone from the Conservation Commission of the town or the state been consulted about this? Another question.
Through the I'm sorry, can anyone hear me? Yeah, through this process, we work closely with DEP in the MEPA process. So all those mounding results that Neil has came to from the study, the groundwater study, has been communicated through the state.
Okay, so the Conservation Office is aware of everything that's been going on? Because my concern is, you got the discharge bed sitting at 83 feet above sea level, Russell Mill Pond right next door sitting at 51 feet. You know, that's clearly a downhill gradient. The headwaters of the Eel River are 1,200 feet away from the discharge beds. And NOAA has listed the native herring in the pond, in the river, the American eel, and the brook trout as highly sensitive aquatic species. Is the water temperature of the headwaters been tested before this project started?
I don't know the answer to that.
What's the temperature of the effluent going into the discharge beds?
Uh, 4 degrees Celsius.
4 degrees. 4 degrees Celsius. So 10 degrees, what's that in Fahrenheit? Well, 0 is 32, right? So maybe 40 degrees Fahrenheit. What I'm getting at is that dumping 2.5 million to 3 million gallons of warm wastewater, 1,200 feet away from the headwaters of the Eel River is going to raise the temperature of the River, destroying that sensitive habitat that these native species depend on. Has any studies been looked into any of that? Like Darlene's brook trout. It's probably why they're dying, is the water temperature is going up. Has there been any studies at all as to the increase in water temperature of the pond as compared to when this project was started?
So I don't know if there's been any studies. That's, that's part of, the town does a nutrient management plan monitoring. I don't know how much, if temperature is part of that or not. I will say that your speculation about the temperature in the Eel River going up as a result of the discharge is probably incorrect. So that water, the effluent that goes into the aquifer, will mix and move over many years in that transport, and the prevailing groundwater temperature, and that will blend to some new temperature that's probably slightly warmer than the prevailing groundwater coming in would have been. But that water is still colder, especially during these drought periods. And this is the point I was trying to make about the base flow augmentation. So during dry periods, when the water in the Eel River is just baking out in the sun, particularly in these dammed impoundments, and let me, again, I haven't seen any data on the Eel River, on Russell Mill Pond, but I do know that in general, impoundments in Massachusetts, there's been many studies on those. Dammed impoundments frequently raise the temperature in streams to 80 degrees or above in peak summertime, much higher than the prevailing situations would be in a natural stream situation. So this additional groundwater recharge coming in during these dry drought conditions would be colder and would serve to lower water temperatures in the Eel River relative to what currently occurs during those drought conditions.
But the nitrates are going to go up, and it's going to rob the water of its oxygen. Is that correct?
The algae in the Eel River are more sensitive to phosphorus than to nitrogen. So the impacts of eutrophication in the Eel River would be as a result of the phosphorus component, which is many, many decades away from getting to the Eel River. So it has not got there yet. As a result, as we're showing on those slides, it hasn't gotten any further than immediately underneath the beds. So no phosphorus that would generate eutrophication in the Eel River has currently got there yet from the beds. So the water quality degradation that is being observed in the Eel River to date is a result of other watershed factors that are not related to the wastewater treatment plant.
So the nitrogen is not going to have any effect on the Eel River at all?
That kind of definitive statement is hard to answer, but in freshwater systems, phosphorus is the thing that people are most concerned about as opposed to nitrogen.
I'd like to have my comments officially recorded in the PIR, please. I have no more questions.
Sure, come on up.
Hi, my name is Chris Frecolossi. I'm a property manager and business owner in Camelot Industrial Park, representing the whole park, I guess. So, number one, I came ready to talk about PFAS, but everybody pretty much handled that. Nitrogen and phosphorus probably doesn't keep most of these people up at night, but I think PFAS does. We currently clean it out of some water that we have at a drinking well at a mobile home park, and you can say you can mitigate it. It gets really expensive. And it's forever, so it's going to build up, and my kids are going to be dealing with it too, so that's scary. But that's been beaten. Everybody's already talked about that. So a big concern for us is you said you would mitigate septic issues, with the potential of the mounding. We will be getting our own hydrologist because just so many questions, and we have to. And mitigating that many septics that we have, our entire park is septic. I just don't believe it. I'd have to see it to believe it, to be honest. And another issue with the mounding that we have is the windmill, the Camelot Wind Project. So our engineer gave us some paperwork. We'll submit it later at a later date. But the turbine is supported on a foundation whose design is long-term performance depends on the soil and groundwater conditions assumed at the time of construction. A sustained rise in the seasonal high groundwater table beneath or near the foundation could reduce soil bearing capacity, introduce buoyant uplift, and affect the stability of the structure under the cyclic and dynamic loads that an operating turbine imposes. Because a wind turbine places substantial overturning demand on its foundation, even modest changes in subsurface conditions warrant careful evaluation. So when someone asked how soon we can do these test wells, we got to do it soon and we got to do it right, and we'll have to do our own. And I mean, that's a big mitigation if this goes wrong. So, I mean, I guess that's the big thing we want everybody to understand is that's a big danger. So we're very concerned about that and just want to make sure we get that on the record. All right. Oh, I'm going to get petty too. So our land was taken by eminent domain for the sewer plant, and we were told in the beginning that the smell would be minimal. I got to be honest with you, I get daily complaints from my tenants that smell is getting worse and worse and worse, and it's, some days it's maybe the cloud cover, it is what it is. But when we add that much more, how bad is it going to be? Honestly, is that something you guys have thought about? Is there any changes to the plant for that? Or, I'm just wondering,
To, I guess, answer a couple of your questions, the wind turbine did come up part of the CAC, and we will be looking at that further as we go through this process. As far as Camelot Drive, we do have some potential of sewering that area. And as far as any odors, I would encourage, if you're having odors, to call the treatment plant, and we can see what's going on at that time to see if we can address those. Like you said, sometimes it is weather conditions. I do not. I do not.
Again, if you have additional questions, just go to a microphone. It's being recorded. They can't hear you.
The question was, do I expect the treatment plant to have more odors? And I said no. Is there any other comment? Kendra, do we have anyone else online that would like to make a comment?
Kevin Enos wants to speak again.
Just one more question. You said that the extending the outflow valve has to avoid the channel in the harbor. Why is that?
Well, the question was about the outfall extension needing to avoid the navigation channel? To avoid impacts to navigation.
I mean, they work on the tunnels in Boston all the time with traffic going through it. Were you specifically told that you can't lay the sewage pipe in the channel?
No.
You weren't? Okay, so you're just assuming that the channel has to be avoided?
That's true.
Okay, thank you. No more questions.
My name's Richard Withington, class of 1971. Go Eagles. Anybody else class of 71? Go Eagles. I'm not in favor of moving forward with the tertiary, with the putting extra effluent into the ground. I don't like it going into the water, don't get me wrong. I think that's a great idea to get it out of the water. But I'm afraid of what's going to happen when we put it in the ground. Even if you do it slowly and religiously and you carefully monitor it. If you did that, I would be really happy. But I'm not confident that that will happen. Let me give you just a quick history. There was a CAC in 1995 that also resisted expansion of the beds. And the committee member at that time, the head of the committee, resigned. This is his resignation letter. It was put into the records by Marty Enos.
Can you step closer to the microphone,
I'm
please?
sorry, thank you. I'm violating my own rule. The head of the committee resigned in '95 because he felt the town was not responsive to the committee's statements. He felt, and I'm not going to get into it, but there's a history. Some people, I didn't even know about this letter till I read it a year ago when it came to my attention. I almost cried because this guy is my cousin. He's dead now, but he stood on principle. He quit because he knew that it just didn't smell right. Now, it's 30 years later. I'm not saying you guys are in the same boat. I really am not, but I got a bad, so this is the history I'm coming into. I wanted you guys to hear that. I want to thank the CAC committee because the Whitten report is 935 pages. I was going to print it out, and I realized that's $800 worth of printing at Staples. That's a 4-inch stack of paper, and I'm a cheap SOB. The cost is the same. I'm going to single-side it. I'm going to get 2 reams of paper out of it. Okay, nobody read this. Everybody who read it is asleep by now. The other one, it's really important, is that 2017. Now, this is the information these guys had to work with. I'm trying to tell you that this is a lot. There's 234 pages in this report. I'll be very quick. This is too much to read. The CAC, my hat's off to these guys. I must have killed myself. I can't read these things in black and white. I had to print them out. It's killing me. Thank you guys for doing this for us. I have some questions. I wasn't aware that different options were being considered, and I know that the outfall, increasing the amount of flow to the current location is what you guys would like to do. Have you considered extending the pipe or moving it? Has that been officially looked at as a project, or was it, please?
I think it was addressed tonight.
I came in late.
Oh, I see, yeah.
I'll look at that. So if that, okay. I appreciate that other alternatives were looked at. I would like the tertiary treatment, or I would like best practices
That's
to
part
be
of the
applied.
tertiary treatment is part of the plan too as well.
It's part of the plan, but it's not currently here. Why didn't we put it in 10 or 15 years ago? What's best practice? Why? I feel like a hick.
So I can tell you that we're already we're going in the design phase.
Okay.
We're doing that.
Okay. I need to hear that because I get upset when I think I can't control stuff and it's going to hurt me.
We're trying to do the best that we
I'm
can.
going to go sit down now before I get my blood pressure up any further. I want to thank you for having this public discussion.
Thank you.
And allowing me to speak.
Kendra, do we have anyone else?
No one else online.
Anyone else in the room care to comment? Thank you for coming. Oh, sure.
My name is Connor Vitek. I'm going to touch on the PFAS again because I don't think there's enough, I think, attention given to it by the town right now. A big question I have, so is there acknowledgement that we know the effects of the chemicals and nutrients outside of the phosphorus and nitrogen going into the harbor right now? Do we know what the effects that it's having now?
That's what I'm aware of.
Okay. Do we know what the effects of the chemicals outside of nitrogen and phosphorus would have on the Eel River? PFAS included.
We have not assessed that.
And just to clarify, and this is my final question, the reason that we're not assessing that is because it's not mandated by the state.
Because it's not mandated by the state, and to my knowledge, no other treatments, plant projects in the state do that either. It's not like Plymouth is standing out on a loan, purposely not doing this stuff. This is how the process works.
Understood. I guess one more question regarding the extending the pipeline out. I know that you had said that that's not really a viable option. Was there a budget number put together for that, or why was that excluded for an option?
There was not an official budget, but we did look at, like I said, the only recent example of something that's been built was Deer Island, whose cost was in the billions in 20-year ago dollars. Obviously, this is smaller, wouldn't be as much. There's two others that are under consideration that I'm not sure how far along. They're not very far along, but I think I saw construction-only estimates of something in the range of $10 million per mile for the building of an outfall pipe. Not to mention all of the work that needs to go into the decades of work that would go into permitting and having that occur. So we're to getting out past the granite. Is that a mile? Is that, I'm not sure exactly what, the point is that it's a cost in the tens of millions of dollars, perhaps more. And we have, because of that, in comparison to the preferred alternative and all the other alternatives, that has not been dug into in any greater depth because it just seems like not a very viable option. It's as simple as that.
Okay, understood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
My name's Janice Goodman. And I was just, one question, why does the town not test the contaminants that are coming in from other towns?
We do basic tests on all septic that is received.
You test all the tests, this stuff?
We-
Why do they still bring stuff in from other towns? That's another question.
It's just a form of another revenue for the town. We take all septic in.
Couldn't they
from-
use that revenue to do a better solution?
We do, it's the sewer department is on enterprise system, and we do use those revenues to increase. That's why we are moving forward with things like the tertiary filter. Yes.
Good evening. Joan Hallinan, Plymouth. I'd like my comment formally recorded in the public involvement report, please. Plymouth has been doubly blessed by being a community that has an ocean and an aquifer within its borders, and with the envy of many communities. It has been documented that the town is not in violation, state or federal, regarding ocean discharge of its effluent. Plymouth beaches are under no restrictions regarding the taking of shellfish, and the entire area is open to the public for fishing and swimming. On the other hand, our aquifer is already showing signs of stress. It has been documented that forever chemicals are currently present at concentrations higher in plant influent and effluent than safe drinking water levels recommend within our aquifer system and have been found in the groundwater and in private wells. My question is, why would the decision to stress the aquifer with increased discharge of sewer effluent ever be a better solution to the ocean outflow system? Thank you.
So with regard to the harbor, there is a draft TMDL. TMDL stands for total maximum daily load. So it's a regulatory restriction on the amount of, in this case, nitrogen loading that will be allowed to occur to correct the environmental degradation that's occurring in a surface water body. That TMDL report is not final. It's been drafted for a very long time. At some point, it will become final, and that TMDL will require reductions in nitrogen load to correct the water quality degradation that is occurring in the harbor. The harbor, despite not violating any of the permit requirements in terms of the plant's wastewater treatment plant, and the swimming beaches on the outer side not violating the swimming standards, the harbor is degraded. Water quality in the harbor is degraded. Eelgrass has nearly completely gone away, and the nitrogen situation will require attention. You're probably aware that on Cape Cod, all of the estuaries, nearly all of the estuaries on the South Shore and some others are under these similar TMDLs, and the state has required that all of the Cape communities develop wastewater plans to address that and correct the situations in the estuaries. That policy was originally intended to include Plymouth as well and was scaled back because of the amount of work and effort that's going in currently on the Cape to do this. Once the Cape is dealt with, or at some point along the way, those same requirements are coming to Plymouth and the rest of coastal Massachusetts with these water quality issues. So it's not fair to say that the harbor is in fine condition and the aquifer, why would you go there, and so forth. The other aspect of that is the Plymouth Carver aquifer is huge. So sole source aquifer is huge. The component of the aquifer that is potentially impacted by this proposed groundwater discharge is relatively small in comparison, and it's a component where no drinking water wells can be or will be, public drinking water wells can be or will be installed. And as we talked about earlier, there's a plan to connect whatever remaining private wells that could be impacted to the town system. So the aquifer degradation from a drinking water standpoint is also not a fair statement.
Well, I don't know if fair is the right word to use, because we are pushing things from say the ocean to the aquifer. There's not enough data really to show, we're talking decades down the road, but we know that decades go by really quickly. And we know that our environment is becoming more and more taxed. So I think we need to, to solve the problem, the CAC put a lot of effort into coming up with listening carefully, going over data and coming up with a plan. And they left with 100%, I'm trying to think of the word, they left feeling that there was no way we should move forward. And I don't know why they weren't listened to. We sat and listened to them all being interviewed, and they were all people of the highest caliber who know far and away more than most of us. And they came up with their decision, and it was disregarded. And I think we need to listen to the experts and pay attention to what nature is telling us. If the fish are dying, if there are, algae growing where it didn't grow before, we need to pay attention and listen to that. And I don't know if you can put the term fair on it.
Richard Withington, class. Anyway, one of the things that I couldn't understand was why we're improving or why we're addressing this at this time. And I look back at the growth statistics or the amount of product that we're handling over the years. If I'm correct, we have not really increased our flow rate through the system. Is that correct?
I can tell you, I've been here for the town of Plymouth now for 5 years.
Yeah.
And we have had a small increase on our average daily flow from 1.5 to 1.6.
Okay. The reason I ask this question is because I'm trying to understand what we're trying to accomplish. And what's the goal here? And I think the goal here is to increase capacity because our Title V wells are failing, and you want to put everybody on pipes rather than dumping it into the ground in their backyard. Is that fair? And you're concerned about further pollution going forward with such wells or such septics?
Yes, so we do, want growth, right? So the town wants to grow, plus we have some areas that do have, I don't want to say failing systems, but they're older systems that may not be treating as well. So an average septic system is about 35 milligrams per liter of nitrogen, where, you know, we can already lower that to 5-6 milligrams per liter when we treat it at the treatment plant. So yes, would like to do some expansion in some sewer projects to better the environment as well. But we are doing a lot of upgrades at the treatment plant. Currently, we are in the design process of the tertiary filter, like you had mentioned. We've also done some other upgrades at the treatment plant to help improve our effluent.
So I'm guessing here the long-term goal is to increase capacity to the central location and process everything there, and increasingly extend our pipes so that we don't have to pollute the ground in our backyards. Is that pretty much fair?
Yeah, I would say that's fair.
I'm concerned that we're putting all of the plan, unless you tell me differently, I'd like to see us not put the entire load into one area. It would be nice if you must have considered other sites or satellite options. I'm looking for alternatives here.
Yes, so we also have another project going on, the CWMP, which is basically a sewer master plan, and we're in the process of that as well, where we could be looking at other satellite areas.
I'm very interested in that, because without this overarching plan, thank you for that, that encourages me that we have a plan and that we're interested in protecting the environment, because in my ignorance, my fear is that none of this is happening and the pitchforks and the angry people come out. Thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Sorry, I came to the meeting late. I ran into a lot of traffic coming home from Boston, but my name is Michael Goodman, and I, along with my wife, own Russell Mills Pond now. I don't have a lot to add as far as technical stuff or anything. It's not my area of expertise. I think Dan stated very well pretty much my feelings, and I just want to go on the record that I am 100% against this. And if it does mess up the pond, which it very well may, because a couple of years ago I already saw huge indications of it. Like Dan was saying, the milfoil was so heavy it was blocking the turbines. And if it does, I fully intend to sue the town for any damages they do to the pond and or the FERC permit I have in FERC plan. I have water rights a mile up and downstream. And again, most people don't understand that around here. Dan has a lot of experience out west. He's a lot more in tune to it. He knows a lot more about it than I do. But I bought the plant or the pond from him, and I'll just go with what he has to say, because his knowledge about it's a lot better than I am. But I just want to go on the record that I am totally against it. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks. Again, for the record, my name is Mark Withington. So I wanted to ask a couple of questions, make a couple of comments so far. So Neil, you talked about the TMDL, do I have that right? Oh, which is going to impose a limit on nitrogen in the harbor. The outfall is one source. What are the other sources?
The other sources are everything you could potentially imagine.
Do we know what the major sources are? Because my understanding, it's not the outfall. Is that correct?
I haven't read the report recently, so I can't, my
think it
understanding
was
was just
the
the opposite, that the outfall
Bluefish River
was the major source. But I could be wrong. Could be septic systems in the watershed as well. Those two, I will say this much, on the Cape, it is all those, the wastewater component is always the dominant by a huge margin
Yeah,
of the.
I think if we're thinking the same report, it was the Jones River as well as the Bluefish River that were contributing.
I think it's all,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I think those are actually more
Yeah.
than, but that was a very old study. I do want to talk about something that Doug brought up, which was the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Planning Committee, which I am in full support of. I think that the town needs to recognize that we have to have a plan on how to handle our wastewater. We need to look no further than the Cape to see what happens when we don't. My concern here is that it would seem as though that plan is coming up with a strategy, and the strategy would then dictate what we should be doing with the plant. I think we have this, if you will, bass backwards. In other words, let's come up with what our plan is. Let's try to figure out how we're going to handle all of this, and then start talking about what we're going to need to do to the plant. My fear is, my cousin Richard said, is that we're under the illusion that we're going to take all of the sewer of a town that's 100 square miles and try to pump it to one plant. And centralized solutions don't work. We don't do it for the fire department, we don't do it for the school department, and we don't do it for a number of reasons. One is because this town is unique in its size, 100 square miles. We're going to have to be pumping sewerage all over the place to get it there. So I encourage the town, and I've stated to the committee, that we should be planning for the future. I just think we've got this bass backwards now. We are expanding a plant without a plan for where the demand is coming from, because it's not coming from where it's at now. It was built in 2000, and the amount of, it was built for the reason for growth, and Doug, I'm not sure if you're talking about residential growth or building or business growth. At the time, it was talked, we needed to do this, we needed to sewer the industrial park because we needed to attract business, because we needed tax revenue. Sounds very familiar to what we're hearing today. The funny thing is, we did all that, and yet we're still at the same point. So we need to come up with a better way of handling this approach than coming up with a solution in search of a problem. So I absolutely applaud the town for the comprehensive wastewater management planning efforts. I just think we've got it out of order. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
One clarification, we have no intention of sewering the whole town and going to one treatment plant. The treatment plant's not designed for that, so that's never an option, and the CWMP process is not looking at that either, just for clarification. Yep.
Kendra, I think that's exactly my point here, is what the CWMP, what this comprehensive plan is going to do is talk about where we're going. Right now, what I'm hearing is we have no idea where we're going. We have no idea why we're not out of spec. We have not seen any growth. We already are licensed to handle whatever type of growth we've seen in the past. So right now, when you ask people, why are we doing this? Nobody knows. The CWMP is going to give that reason. Until then, I think you're just going to see the community continue to push back on this, as we should. We've been through this before. And I'm going to caution people moving forward. If we're saying, well, no, there's a new sheriff in town, in all due respect to these folks, to me, you look like the old sheriff. And the old sheriff is how we got into this problem. As, again, my cousin talked about my other cousin, Cricket Withington, who was so discouraged with how we got that plant up there in the first place that he quit the committee. Let's not do this again. Let's come up with a strategy, articulate the strategy so that now we can see why we're doing it. Thank you.
I have just one question, I think it is. How much out-of-town sewage do we take in a day?
I wouldn't know how many gallons from out of town.
Excuse me?
From out of town, I don't
With this
keep
day
track
and
of.
age of computers and so forth and so on, we have no idea how much out-of-town sewage we take in?
It's approximately 100,000 a day. It's been published already by the student.
We take in 100,000 gallons per day. If we didn't take in outside storage, I imagine Plymouth would be in fine shape, and we would not be damaging the ocean or the Eel River.
I'm Mary Gatzlick again. I would like to circle back to your response to testing the septic that comes from off-site, and out of town. You said you tested, but could you specify exactly what you test for?
We check the total solids, pH, and BOD.
Okay, so then how do you verify that the septic that's being received by the town is sanitary only and is not industrial? How do you prevent the proverbial Mickey being slipped to that plant to upset it?
Again, these are basic tests that we do that would help us determine if we have to refuse a load of septic.
How do you verify that the waste is sanitary only? Is it just a handshake and a wink, wink? I promise that this is from sanitary?
Again, we have staff in the septic area. When we're receiving septic, we make those tests, and we can, along with those tests, just a visual test, along with pH, total solids, and BOD, that if we determine a load that would be detrimental to the plant, we would refuse it.
So basically, I mean, I understand what you test for, but how do you validate that it's sanitary only? How do you eliminate the industrial wastewaters? I mean, I've seen 10,000 gallon tankers coming down 495, and they just happen to follow them into the wastewater treatment plant that they're not from the town of Plymouth. So how can you look the town in the face and say, basically, this stuff is safe, it's sanitary only, it contains no industrial waste? Is it a note, is it an affidavit that the people who are handling the septic fill out, or you're just saying, okay, dude, we accept your word?
I can only answer how I answered, how we
All
test
right,
it.
well, I think you're missing the opportunity here to protect the plant, protect the watershed, and you should really look into it. Thank you.
Richard Withington, last question. The age of the field was mentioned as being a possible problem. Is it true that the fields that we're using have a lifespan of in excess of 20 years? We're in the ground now 20 years at the same spot, and I don't know how long these beds last. Can you help me understand that?
I don't have a good answer for you. I've never heard that statement about this plant or any plant about its lifespan.
It's a rumor that I'm trying to quell. If you
Yeah.
could help me, I'd appreciate it.
So I'm quite sure that there are beds for older plants than Plymouth that are still in action statewide, and they do get refurbished from time to time. They get raked out and so forth, but that is news to me that there's a 20-year
Well,
lifespan.
that's a rumor that I started, and if you can quell it or help me, any information you could give me that would help me allay my fears would be great. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else, anyone new that would like to make a comment?
And I'll come up here because the mic's here. Just a point of detail. When was the comprehensive blah, blah, blah wastewater treatment group started? There is a citizens advisory committee for that, I understand. Do you know when that began? I got the feeling it wasn't very long ago.
It was 2024, I believe.
The end of 2024?
Yes.
Because 2024, I think in the fall, is when the proposal came from, I'm guessing, your group, to expand the current wastewater treatment plant. Yes? I'm just kind of wondering, who created this other CAC?
We did.
You did. So when you say you mean the department, the DPW?
Yes, so I went to town meeting for appropriation, and the select board chose the current CAC for the CWMP.
Okay, I'm going to say CWMP. But they didn't, okay, they did that, and then they also did a CAC for the specific expansion of the wastewater treatment plant.
Correct.
About the same time?
No, that was before,
Which was before?
the groundwater discharge, this group.
It was before?
Correct.
I thought that was the fall of 2024.
The CWMP committee came after this groundwater discharge committee.
Okay, pretty close in time, based on what you just said. You said 2024 for the CWMP.
I believe it was.
Can I clarify that? I just looked through my files. of
Good, that's
when-
what I'm looking for.
So
Hard facts.
We hired a consultant in the end at the end of 2023. We hired a consultant to come on board to start the CWMP process. And they began the initial data gathering process, and then the CWMP committee was formed once we were ready to go to the next stage, which we really needed the public involvement and the committee's take on.
And so therefore, the committee started about the end of 2024?
Give me 2 seconds and I'll
Yeah.
check my emails and let
I'm
you
not
know.
trying to make life tough for Mr. Pinard here. I just would like a very hard detail.
That was the beginning of 2025. I believe that was for the
CWMP,
Yep,
Citizens
establishing that
Advisory.
committee. Yep.
And the Citizens Advisory was started around November, December. I believe the Select Board voted that they should create a CAC for the wastewater treatment plan proposed expansion.
That one, I would have to go both through and look through some other
I
files
just remember
for,
that
but
from the
yeah.
information I've been sent by members of the CAC.
Yeah,
for
so
the
the
wastewater treatment
CWMP
plant.
committee went in front of the select board in February 4th of 2025
I
for
thought
them
so, a
to
little later.
form that committee.
Okay.
And it took a while to form because there
Mhm.
actually wasn't enough applicants at first to
I
form the
understand.
committee. So that took a little bit.
Okay. And that came from you, the DPW, to have that other committee. Why didn't you just go with that group to begin with? The CWMP? Because as Mark was saying, Bass Ackwards, yeah, I agree. I only found out about the CWMP because one of my neighbors is on the committee.
So committees have certain charges. So we have, if we want to form a committee, you have to go to the board and have
Yeah.
them form that committee with that charge.
Mm-hmm.
People from the groundwater committee were welcome to apply for the CWMP committee.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't happen. That it wasn't that it's just that's the charge of what the committee is. So
Okay. I will say I found it very intriguing that they both were similar in time. Where they came from now, I understand. I also would like to comment that I understand there is no select board member on the CWMP, but a select board member was put on the
So there was a
CAC?
liaison to the select board that was a part of the CWMP committee, which was the former assistant town manager. When he left, the select board decided to have an actual select board member be a liaison. We had requested a select board member to be on the committee or be a liaison, and at the first time it was formed, they didn't want to do that. They just wanted to have a liaison that they appointed. So, but now a select board member is a liaison to the committee.
Liaison doesn't mean a member of the committee?
No, they didn't want to be members. They just wanted to be liaisons to the committee.
Who didn't want to be members?
The select board. Yep, it was their decision.
And yet someone on the select board wanted to be a member of the CAC for the treatment plant?
I can't answer that. Again, this is the select board's decision on that.
You don't.
Again, that was the select board's decision.
Mr. Golden still here? Okay. It just seemed a little weird that there should be a select board member on one citizens advisory committee with a certain amount of play and power, but not on the other one, which is an even more important committee for the citizens. It looks bad. Plus, the vote didn't go to somebody, authentic, just a select board member. Thank you.
Rose Forbes, again. So this whole discussion has actually brought up more questions for me. But one in particular is, Doug, I know you're aware that the town of Falmouth is looking at a project to discharge treated wastewater to the ocean, right? You're familiar with that? So when Neil mentioned the TMDL concerns with nitrogen, I mean, it started to click in my mind that, well, the town of Falmouth, they've always been very proactive in treatment on their drinking water as well as their wastewater. And they have several unit operations, way more than just tertiary treatment for phosphorus and nitrogen. I think in some cases they have activated carbon. But my question is, if the town of Falmouth is looking to discharge to the ocean and TMDLs are an issue in Cape, they must be looking at treating nitrogen, right? Before it discharges to the ocean. So to me, this is an Occam's razor situation here where the simplest solution is treat the nitrogen at the effluent of the treatment plant and continue with the ocean discharge. That way you don't have any TMDL concerns, or you mitigate those concerns. You don't have hydraulic concerns because the water's going to the ocean. You're not going to be mounding the groundwater and affecting the Warren Wells Brook and the Eel River watershed, and potentially the wind turbine and some of the other new construction in Camelot Park. So have you considered this? I mean, I know we went through all these alternatives as part of the DEIR, and you guys did a great job. But I think maybe you need to look at another alternative, and that is, instead of using the grant money, the $3 million grant money to design for phosphorus to put the water into the groundwater, just treat for nitrogen at the source and continue to discharge to the ocean. So that's just my, do you want to comment on that, or you're pretty tired, I can tell. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rose.
Hi, Matt Hoagland again. Sorry, but I'm stuck on the idea of improving water quality in the Eel River. What could the plant do? Is it possible that the plant could treat to such a level that it would improve water quality with its base flows to the Eel River? Does the technology exist to get the the nutrients down so low that it would actually improve conditions in the Eel River?
I can only tell you that I have, my goal is to do what's best for, not only for the town of Plymouth, but for the environment. And since my short term here, I feel as though I've instituted a lot of programs and upgrades at the treatment plant to move this town and the environment in the right direction. And I will continue to do so.
Okay, that's fair. But does the technology exist to where water quality could actually improve in the Eel River?
I can only tell you that we are continually looking at ways to improve.
Okay, good, thank you. And then one other thought on this. If the town were to sewer all of the septic systems within the Eel River basin, would that improve water quality in the Eel River?
I believe that is part of the
Yes.
comprehensive wastewater management plan, and I don't think the answer has been quantity.
Yes, yes.
They have done that already, and the answer is yes, then, okay.
Sorry, the answer is yes, what, it would improve?
Yes, from the basic analysis that's been done so far is sewering the properties on the Eel River watershed, because again, septic systems, Title V systems are designed to protect public health,
Right.
not environmental health.
Right. Thank you, and thanks for your continuing efforts to improve what we're trying to do.
Is there anyone else or anyone new that would like to comment?
We were talking about, my name's Don Holm. We were talking about trucking in waste, and if there is somewhat like 60 to 100,000 gallons a day coming in from other sources, some of those sources are, can you tell us if they're the sewage pumping, the septic pumping companies, who they might be?
Some of the companies that come to,
Yeah.
we have all the local companies. We have SOARs that will come in. We have, geez, you're causing a blank, but Bulldog.
Wind River.
Yep, Wind River will come. Bay State, yep, thank you.
And Clean Harbors.
No.
I was told they are,
Nope.
but that's, you would know better.
Yep, Pure Flow is another one.
And what about the interstate transport companies?
That would be news to me. I know a lot of people say that they've witnessed trucks coming from out of state. We ship out of state, but we focus directly on make sure that our local haulers are accommodated. But we do take septage from local other communities.
And do you see an uptick in this inflow from trucked-in waste?
No, we pretty much will keep it between 80 and 120.
For the future?
That's what we like to keep it at that, yes.
Okay. And
we could take more, but we don't like to go that far.
so are you familiar with the E-manifest system for hazardous waste?
An
E-manifest system, EPA, Institutes for Transportation of Hazardous Waste.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking that perhaps that's a manifest system could be for any of the trucked-in waste, maybe not as rigid as EPA standards, but create a standard that would satisfy the town for certain types of materials coming in that we've talked about tonight that are late, they get into the area of pharmaceuticals, PFAS, other types of potential low-grade toxic materials that you would be treating, and somehow put the onus on the trucking companies or transportation companies to provide more information to help you in your testing in the labs.
I can certainly look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, folks, we are a little after 8. If there is anyone new, we'll continue, but if not, we are ready to wrap up. Is there anyone new that would like to comment? Kendra, do we have any new online?
No, no one else.
Okay, well, thank you folks for coming out. One more thing before you leave, if you did want to sign the sign-up sheet, we can try to make sure that you get notified of when we file the draft, and also we will be posting that online.